I'm right down the bottom of the hill, Sheriff. I'm 6'8" in a cowboy outfit. I got a little pygmy standing right beside me, dressed just like me. You can't miss me.
Think Smokey and the Bandit was just a goofy car chase comedy? It's way more than fast cars and southern sass. Beneath the roaring engines and flying insults is a trail of bizarre twists, off-the-cuff genius, and behind-the-scenes chaos that even die-hard fans don't know. From million-dollar paychecks to improvised insults that became iconic, this film's story is packed with curveballs. Oh, and one fact involves a certain legendary filmmaker who shocked everyone with his unexpected obsession. 15. Alfred Hitchcock was a huge fan. One of the most surprising admirers of Smokey and the Bandit was none other than Alfred Hitchcock, the legendary director best known for psychological thrillers like Psycho, Rear Window, and Vertigo. While Hitchcock was revered for his precise, methodical storytelling and mastery of suspense, he reportedly had a deep appreciation for the fast-paced chaos and humor of Smokey and the Bandit. According to crew members, he watched the film multiple times and praised its timing, energy, and movement, a high compliment coming from a filmmaker known for his obsession with pacing. At first, Hitchcock's regard for the film may seem surprising, but viewed through a lens of craftsmanship, it makes perfect sense. Smokey and the Bandit was not only obviously different than anything Hitchcock had ever made, but it was well-edited, fast-paced, full of character and momentum, which he was generally fond of. The various chase sequences, as well as the rhythm of the rapid-fire banter and good-natured fussiness, built a backdrop for quick edits from action to comedy, to a form of cadence and momentum that Hitchcock apparently recognized and appreciated. Based on how he expressed it, it wasn't merely a funny car movie to him. It was again a high-water mark of efficient, kinetic storytelling. In a film that most critics had deemed as the lowest form of disposable entertainment, Hitchcock's endorsement served as a form of validation. If the master of suspense could find something to appreciate regarding the narrative structure of the film and its competence, it put Smokey and the Bandit above the categorical dismissal of crowd-pleasing box office drivel. His recognition gave a certain weight and credence to a film that happened to be born from impulse, improv, and quick timing. If it proved anything, it demonstrated that great cinema certainly does not always have to be serious, but it should move. And while Hitchcock saw its brilliance early on, this next weird fact reveals the studio didn't share that vision. Not even close. 14. The studio didn't believe in the movie. When Smokey and the Bandit entered production, Universal Studios didn't have high hopes for the project. To the executives, it looked like a lowbrow regional comedy, a fast car, backroad romp that might play well in the South, but wouldn't translate to a broader audience. Compared to the more polished cerebral films being made at the time, like Annie Hall or Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Smokey and the Bandit seemed like a risky bet with limited appeal. As a result, the studio treated it more like a niche experiment than a blockbuster in the making. Their doubts about the movie became even clearer halfway through the production when money got tight, and Universal cut the film's budget. Filtering down from studio execs to crew, cuts hit everyone hard. Staff were cut, schedules were compressed, and resources were limited. The crew was put under extra strain, improvising scenes, reducing locations, and combining as much as possible to make the best of their situation. Both cast and crew worked exceptionally hard and were committed to producing something special. Burt Reynolds, Jackie Gleason, and the like relied on creativity, timing, and snap judgment to keep on course. Ironically, everything Universal thought would hinder the movie, its southern charm, brash characters, and uncomplicated narrative, is what captured audiences' attention. When released, Smokey and the Bandit exploded at the box office, transcending from audiences in the South to audiences across America. The movie grossed over $120 million, ranking it as the second highest-grossing movie of 1977, behind Star Wars. It even outgrossed critical darlings Close Encounters and Annie Hall. This said, mass success isn't always in accord with studio or critical views of what success will be. 13. The studio didn't want Sally Field. When casting began for Smokey and the Bandit, Universal Studios had a very clear vision of who they wanted opposite Burt Reynolds. And Sally Field wasn't it. At the time, Field was still best known for wholesome roles in television series like The Flying Nun, and studio executives didn't see her as a fit for a Southern comedy fueled by fast cars, flirtation, and rebellious energy. In their eyes, she lacked the glamour and sex appeal typically associated with leading ladies in action comedies of the era. Simply put, they didn't believe audiences would buy her as the romantic interest of someone like Reynolds. However, Burt Reynolds found something completely different. He recognized that Sally Field was talented and timely, and seen as someone who could bring realism and character to the role of Carrie, a runaway bride who ends up as the passenger in Bandit's car. Reynolds used a little star power to combat the studio's misgivings and insisted on her casting. The studio eventually gave in, and Field was cast, a casting decision that would change the course of their work and lives dramatically. Once they arrived on set, Reynolds and Field had an instant chemistry that jumped off the screen. Their playful dialogue and experience together felt organic and original. It was a matter of time before their professional relationship turned personal. While cameras were rolling and chases and slapstick funny endings were filmed, their romantic part of the relationship was developing behind the scenes. The heat of their personal relationship added reality to their acting and made their on-screen love richer than the screenplay. It was not just about casting, it was lightning in a bottle. 12th, Burt and Sally fell in love on set. The electric chemistry between Burt Reynolds and Sally Field in Smokey and the Bandit wasn't just great acting, it was real. As the cameras captured their playful banter and mutual attraction, the two stars were falling for each other in real life. The set became a backdrop for more than just high-speed chases and Southern comedy. It became the beginning of a deeply passionate romance. They spent nearly every day together, sharing scenes, trailers, and conversations that often blurred the line between their characters and themselves. Their relationship off-camera moved just as rapidly as their relationship on camera. Burt Reynolds was already an icon and was attracted to Sally through her wit, warmth, and independence. Sally found herself enamored with Burt's charm and confidence, while simultaneously trying to manage the overwhelming publicity that comes with dating a star of the highest order. They felt, even during filming, more like partners than just co-stars. Two forces of nature together in celebrity, hilarity, and a sense of rebelliousness that equaled that of the movie. However, the reality of fame and personality began to interfere behind the scenes. Burt Reynolds was often considered a man larger than life, who wanted to be in charge. Sally Field was finding her own voice as a serious actress and a woman who did not want to be in the shadows. As their feelings began to deepen towards one another, the combination of media attention and their own personal insecurities made it harder to keep the relationship uncomplicated. What started out as a whirlwind trip down the open highway gradually transitioned into an emotional imbalance accompanied by the loss of control, which led them both to feel like no one had actually won. 11. Jackie Gleason improvised almost all his lines. Jackie Gleason's portrayal of Sheriff Buford T. Justice in Smokey and the Bandit became one of the most iconic comedic performances in film history, and much of it wasn't even in the script. A seasoned comedian and improviser, Gleason brought his own flavor to the role, crafting insults, catchphrases, and one-liners on the fly. The character's unforgettable mix of rage, swagger, and absurdity came directly from Gleason's comedic instincts, making Buford less of a written role and more of a living, breathing force of nature, powered by improvisation. Ever since Gleason arrived on the set, the crew realized that it was going to be pointless to write him dialogue. He had such amazing timing and charm that even Burt Reynolds would struggle with a straight face during takes. One of the film's most famous lines, "There ain't no way you came from my loins," he made that up on the fly. Along with a myriad of funny rants, Gleason could take even the simplest of reactions and turn them into an entire hilarious quote, instantly inventing sentences in the heat of a scene and nailing every emotional register in the moment. Gleason was remarkable in staying in character while tossing out a string of creative, spontaneous insults. This is what transformed Buford T. Justice into an amazing comedic character. He was a performer with a Southern dialect, crazy facial expressions, and wild outbursts, which brought an electric rawness that could never happen with scripted dialogue. But his improvisation in our smart dialogue was not only funny, it lent authenticity to a character who might have easily become a cliché. Instead, he made Buford into a fully realized, magnificently over-the-top character who made every scene he was a part of better. 10. Jerry Reed was cast the night before filming. Jerry Reed's involvement in Smokey and the Bandit was a last-minute decision that turned out to be one of the film's most serendipitous strokes of genius. Originally, the role of Cletus Snowman Snow was offered to other actors and musicians, but none seemed to fit. With filming set to begin and the role still unfilled, Burt Reynolds, a longtime friend of Reed's, made a call the night before production started. He wanted Reed for the part, not just because of his talent, but because he knew Reed embodied the spirit of the film's Southern roots and laid-back rebellion. Reed showed up on set with little time to get prepared, which was fine because he fell into the role of Snowman, like it was freshly written for him. He had instant credibility in the part because of his natural charm, relaxed humor, and country boy authenticity. Reed was more than a sidekick. His snowman defined the film's long-haul trip. He was a loyal, fearless companion to the Bandit, and he balanced the film's high-speed antics with some grounded charm. The chemistry that he and Reynolds developed brought a real-world friend dynamic to their on-screen exchanges, enabling the audience to buy into their wild cross-country trip. But Reed didn't stop acting. He also sat down with his guitar during the production and wrote what would become the film's signature song, Eastbound and Down. The song captured the spirit of the movie perfectly. Fast, fun, and with an outlaw-inspired vibe. Not only did the song define the soundtrack for the film, but it also became a country music hit all by itself. Not only did a last-minute casting decision yield a memorable character, but it also ultimately became an iconic song, a strong testament to Reed's innate creative ability and talent. 9. Buford T. Justice was based on a real cop. The larger-than-life character of Sheriff Buford T. Justice wasn't a product of pure imagination. He was inspired by a real person Jackie Gleason encountered during his time in Florida. Gleason, known for his keen observational humor, once had a run-in with a Florida highway patrolman who left a lasting impression. The man was loud, brash, foul-mouthed, and oddly charismatic, a perfect blend of authority and absurdity. Gleason never forgot him, and when the opportunity arose to play a Southern lawman in Smokey and the Bandit, he reached back to that real-life experience to shape the role. Gleason didn't just mimic the officer's cadence, he imitated his whole being. From the loud voice and exaggerated Southern drawl to the unyielding pursuit of the Bandit, Buford T. Justice became a frantically walking drawing of a specific kind of cop, obsessed with pride, image, and control, who was ultimately undone by his own bluster. By modeling the character on a real person, Gleason was able to grow his absurdist performance in something grounded in reality that made it even funnier and memorable. Refining his performance, Gleason reached out to another real Southern sheriff to spend some time on set, and then studied the man's body language, facial expressions, and vocal rhythms to capture the nuanced world of Southern law enforcement. This detail was key to placing Buford T. Justice, the crazed villain, against a rational, realistic foil, albeit an absurd one. His catchphrases and blow-ups were funny, but they also sounded like things you would hear a frustrated sheriff exclaim on a scorching day chasing down rule breakers he only vaguely understands. 8. Pontiac donated 4 Trans Ams. Pontiac's decision to donate 4 brand-new Trans Ams to the production of Smokey and the Bandit was a game-changing move that gave the film its sleek, rebellious visual identity. The black and gold 1977 Trans Am quickly became synonymous with the Bandit himself, fast, flashy, and impossible to ignore. The cars were meant to be symbols of cool and freedom, and they played a central role in the movie's numerous high-speed chases and daredevil stunts. At the time, Pontiac likely saw it as a promotional opportunity. What they didn't anticipate was how quickly those cars would be pushed to their limits and beyond. The action was insane in the movie, and most of the action was practical, which means there was no CGI, no trickery. The chases, jumps, and tight turns were all done for real, which took a brutal toll on the vehicles. Every Trans Am stood up to death in countless ways on dirt roads probably made to a certain rating, and everything in between. But most ended with bent frames, cracked axles, and crushed bodywork. In a very short amount of time, all 4 cars took on a lot of damage, with all but one becoming practically undrivable. As the production crew raced to finish shooting, they were racing against physical destruction, trying to make sure they had at least one working hero vehicle left for the last few scenes. Even with the limited budget left, and no available budget left to find replacements, the production crew began to build out smart salvage strategies. They would take salvage parts off of the wrecked Trans Ams and build together whatever they could. And sometimes duct tape, super glue, and a quick paint job would create a functional car out of several wrecks. Movie magic became truly literal when the production disguised damage and angle into the presentation. But in the end, they executed their vision and delivered the performance and car action that, it turned out, was central to the movie's appeal. If you thought wrecking 4 Trans Ams was wild, wait until you find out how real the danger got, with 0 digital tricks to fall back on. 7. There were no CGI effects. All stunts were real. One of the defining features of Smokey and the Bandit is its gritty, high-octane action, and none of it was achieved with computer-generated effects. In an age before CGI became the industry standard, every skid, jump, and crash were performed live, with real cars and real stunt drivers risking their safety to capture the perfect shot. This commitment to practical effects gave the film its raw, kinetic energy. Viewers could feel the tension in each chase, the impact of every landing, and the exhilaration of pushing machines to their limits. There was no digital safety net, just guts, skill, and precision driving. Added to the authenticity was Burt Reynolds, who insisted on doing some of his own driving, even though it was obvious that he could get hurt. He was fearless and truly embraced adrenaline. Reynolds wanted the driving to feel authentic, and while the shots where we see his face, we were better off letting the seasoned stunt drivers do the more dangerous parts of the sequence. Reynolds was driving the car much more than just those close-up shots. Having his own authentic reactions in the car and taking chances on the road also helped sell the reaction that the Bandit was in charge of that black Trans Am on all of those crazy trips that we saw him do. The stunt team put forth a great effort in junking out action sequences that were organized and well thought out to push the envelope in the types of car chase films made at that time. The high-speed pursuits through Main Street and then the leaps across every kind of bridge or body of water resulted in some very risky driving and were made under pressure, needing them only happen with an ever-increasing split-second timing without losing the whole stunt through coordination. Accidents while filming were always an issue, and we all know accidents do happen. However, the real risks were much higher with so much going on. The result is impressive, gritty, and exciting chase sequences, shot on film and in the real world, and every bit of it still looks authentic compared to digital scenes and effects. 6. A real cop almost arrested the stunt crew. During one of the high-octane chase scenes being filmed for Smokey and the Bandit, the line between movie magic and real-life mayhem got dangerously blurred. The production had blocked off a stretch of highway to film a sequence involving speeding cars and reckless maneuvers. Business as usual for a movie filled with stunt driving. However, not all local law enforcement had been notified about the shoot. In the middle of filming, a real police officer, completely unaware that a movie was being made, came upon the chaotic scene and believed he was witnessing an illegal street race in progress. Upon observing numerous cars speeding around the corner with no apparent permits, along with stunt performers acting as if they were attempting to evade law enforcement, the warm weather officer wasted no time in making his way to the set. He activated his sirens, drove onto the set, and exited his cruiser to search for anyone he could arrest. The stunt team, still in character mid-scene, went into panic mode when the officer attempted to shut it all down. There was actual concern for a moment that the production team and potentially actors would end up in cuffs, and their production was significantly overshadowed by this controlled shoot gone out of control. It took several minutes for the situation to settle down. Crew members had to effectively prove that they were part of a legitimate film production and that there was no grand escape plan. Paperwork was pulled, explanations were given, and in a mess of disbelief and frustration, the officer permitted them to continue their shoot. This incredible handle-crushing moment served as a chaotic reminder of how convincingly real the stunts and action appeared. So convincing, in fact, that trained law enforcement could not discern the difference between reality and fiction. 5. The original ending was darker, but was scrapped. The original ending of Smokey and the Bandit was a far cry from the fun, high-spirited conclusion audiences ultimately saw. Early drafts of the script featured a more grounded and somber finale, one where the Bandit faced the legal and emotional consequences of his outlaw lifestyle. It was reflective, slower in tone, and meant to offer a realistic wrap-up to the chaos that came before. However, as filming progressed, it became clear to the cast and crew that this serious ending didn't fit the tone of the film they were actually making. A fast-paced, joy-filled ride, fueled by humor, rebellion, and charisma. The set itself was as light as air throughout filming, and the chemistry of the characters, notably Burt Reynolds, Sally Field, and Jerry Reed, warranted a conclusion to remain genuine to that chemistry. It would have been so easy to force a square peg into a round hole with a mismatched ending to the film, as it had developed through improvisational moments and spontaneity. The group on set had the foresight to make an executive decision. They would forego the original ending and develop a new one, right there and then. There was no rewrite, no drafting for weeks on end. It was gut feeling and understanding what was going to feel right for the story. The captioned, improvised conclusion that made it to the theater depicted the Bandit and his crew riding off into the sunset, laughing and getting ready for yet another wild run. It was slick, lighthearted, and had the same irremovable spirit of levity sprinkled throughout the rest of the film. This off-the-cuff decision not only provided a feel-good resolution the audience never asked for, but also encompassed the Bandit's easygoing, devil-may-care attitude. This is precisely the sort of ending that demanded nothing from the audience and causes them to leave smiling, humming, eastbound and down, and wanting to hit the road. 4. Critics hated it. Audiences loved it. When Smokey and the Bandit hit theaters in 1977, critics were less than impressed. Many viewed it as a lowbrow, slapstick-heavy comedy that lacked depth or artistic merit. Notably, famed film critic Roger Ebert gave it just 2 stars, citing it as entertaining but ultimately shallow and disposable. Other reviews echoed similar sentiments, dismissing it as a redneck romp that leaned too heavily on car chases, crude humor, and Southern stereotypes. From a critical standpoint, the film seemed destined to be quickly forgotten, a popcorn flick without lasting value. While critics dismissed this film, audiences responded with laughter and sold-out theaters. Smokey and the Bandit was a commercial triumph, as it resonated with moviegoers keen on a story filled with comedic moments, high-speed action, and a feeling of rebelliousness. Burt Reynolds and Sally Field's chemistry, the legendary one-liners with Jackie Gleason's performance, and the thrilling stunts were all enjoyed by the audience seeking entertainment. Audiences didn't just watch the film, they quoted it, they rewatched it, and they celebrated it. Word of mouth spread quickly, and ticket sales followed suit. By the end of the year, Smokey and the Bandit had grossed more than $120 million, making the film the #2 grossing film of 1977 behind Star Wars. Smokey and the Bandit grossed more than other films that were nominated for Academy Awards as well. Close Encounters of the Third Kind, Annie Hall, and thus, it prioritizes the extent to which audiences want to embrace certain films regardless of critical acclaim. The success of Smokey and the Bandit reinforces an important lesson within cinema, that sometimes the audience really wants to be entertained. Smokey and the Bandit succeeded in that regard and remains a case study in pop culture history. 3. The film boosted Trans Am sales. The release of Smokey and the Bandit did more than entertain audiences. It triggered a nationwide obsession with the black and gold 1977 Pontiac Trans Am. With Burt Reynolds behind the wheel, the sleek muscle car wasn't just a prop, it was a star in its own right. The Trans Am became a symbol of cool, rebellion, and freedom, perfectly matching the Bandit's fast-talking, rule-breaking persona. Its bold design, roaring engine, and unforgettable presence on screen transformed it from a niche performance car into a pop culture icon. Almost immediately after the film first screened, Pontiac dealers would see customers pouring through their doors, clamoring for some amount of the Trans Am drive they saw on screen. They didn't complain about what color or package they were ordering, just let them drive the newly popular Pontiac. In some areas, Trans Am sales had doubled, and it was firmly established as one of the most sought-after American cars of the late 1970s. The black and gold special edition, in particular, became the generational dream car, and that popularity can be traced almost exclusively to the influence of the Bandit. 2. Burt Reynolds was paid over $1 million. When Smokey and the Bandit went into production, Burt Reynolds was at the absolute peak of his fame. Fresh off a string of box office hits and known for his effortless charm, rugged good looks, and Southern swagger, Reynolds was arguably the most bankable star in Hollywood at the time. Universal Pictures understood that his involvement was critical to the film's success, which is why they agreed to pay him a staggering salary of over $1 million, a figure that exceeded the combined earnings of the entire supporting cast and crew. It was a bold financial move that underscored just how much weight Reynolds' name carried in the industry. The decision to give Reynolds such a large paycheck stirred some controversy. Some crew members grumbled about the pay differences, and the tension was felt. The crew worked long hours on a tight budget, while Reynolds was clearly the center of attention, on and off camera. There is no denying his importance. Every scene relied on his character. Every word he spoke had charm, and his star could turn what was going to be a low-budget regional comedy into a big premiere. Love it or hate it, there was no question who people were going to see. That $1 million paycheck set the stage. But this last weird fact, it's the unexpected, law-breaking spark that started it all. 1. The plot was based on a real crime. In the 1970s, Coors beer wasn't just a popular beverage, It was a highly sought-after contraband in parts of the United States. Due to its lack of preservatives and pasteurization, Coors had to be kept cold at all times, which meant it couldn't be legally sold or transported east of the Mississippi River without specialized refrigeration and strict distribution compliance. This created a kind of black market demand in states where Coors wasn't legally available. People would drive across state lines just to smuggle it back for parties, or to sell at a premium, making the beer something of a forbidden treasure in the South. The bizarre reality sparked Smokey and the Bandit's delightfully absurd, yet unbelievably relatable plot. The premise of the film, a ridiculously high-speed run to illegally transport a truck filled with Coors beer from Texas to Georgia, may sound like purely comedic fiction, but it was undeniably based on real circumstances. After finishing a previous production, members of the crew put themselves in a criminal position by attempting to deliver Coors to a movie set across state lines. They could not help but see the ridiculous nature of facing a penal consequence because of beer, which planted the seeds for a story that would become one of the most beloved action comedies of the period. Thanks for riding along. If you enjoyed these wild facts about Smokey and the Bandit, hit that like button, drop a comment with your favorite moment, and don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes movie madness. Got time for one more lap? Check out the next video on your screen. Trust us, it's just as crazy. See you down the road.